So Community Conserve was basically uh, uh, the idea that there's a needs to be the pooling of municipal resources to really address a lot of environmental issues and leverage the ability of each municipality with each other to get kind of the problematic or challenging environmental and conservation issues dealt with in Alberta. Um, this initiative was initiated a couple of years ago, but we're just kind of rolling it out as we go. And we will discuss some of the projects that we've done so far on as part of the Community Conserve project. But really, this webinar is an introduction to the Community Conserve project and how it might be useful in your day-to-day work to get some of these challenges addressed. Oops. If I can get it to work. If there are any issues with the webinar or the presentation, please feel free to type something in the chat line in the side, and hopefully it'll all be good. So as I mentioned, it is a project of the Environmental Law Center and the Mistakis Institute. I have to say that really it was the Mistakis Institute that drove the initiation of this project, and a great idea to kind of combine forces and our different expertise in terms of conservation management and outreach, and kind of the more technical and applied side, as well as policy analysis that Mistakis brings to the table, as well as the legal side that the Environmental Law Center brings to the table. Oops, again, it's having an issue here. We do have the benefit of the support of the two major umbrella groups, AUMA, or the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, and the Rural Municipalities of Alberta, or RMA as they are now called. And my name again is Jason Unger. So what is it? Really, Community Conserve is two major things. It's a platform or a forum to get ideas to the table. So ideas and issues that your municipality may have around conservation measures or around policy. The idea is to leverage and group those ideas with other municipalities and then have resources there to move on them, to action them in some way. It's also a capacity building program insofar as access to expertise can be limited in many municipalities. It's based on municipal viewpoints, so it's really driven from the municipality perspective. And it's basically an idea of collaborating and co-funding projects moving forward. So really the forums, it's a forum and really a capacity building process. Why did we pursue this? I think there's a variety of reasons, whether you're dealing with land use issues, recreation issues. There are a variety of rural and urban conservation dilemmas. Often these dilemmas are driven and decided by others, whether that's the provincial government or other players. And often municipalities are struck by a lack of capacity or funding to deal with some of these challenges. Finding appropriate expertise can be difficult, especially in some of these areas of conservation and legal areas where there's a lot of factors at play. Funding is usually a barrier, maybe not always, but it often is a barrier. And there's often the idea that municipalities aren't necessarily aware that other municipalities are facing the same issues, and therefore there's the ability to leverage things where, or the opportunity to collaborate and leverage with other partnering municipalities that you may not be aware of. And hopefully Community Conserve can play that role as kind of an aggregator of issues and municipal partnerships. So again, who created Community Conserve? Again, it's Mistakis Institute and the Law Center. We have quite a bit of experience in helping municipalities in a variety of challenges. As part of this Community Conserve project, we will talk about some of the work that we have published to date, and it's all available online as well. RMA and AUMA, for their part, really support us in terms of communications. but also help vetting project plans and advising on the structure of the program. The intent of Community Conserve is to be driven by municipalities, so it is focused on serving municipal needs, and so the idea is that it's an aggregating center for ideas and for funds. We also had an advisory committee with a wide range of people from differing municipalities of different sizes, both municipal, rural and urban, to provide us advice going forward. I should note that as an interesting aside, that the advisory committee in one of our initial kickoffs, they thought it was a great idea. Could we do every issue rather than focusing on conservation and environmental issues? But unfortunately, that is where our expertise lies. So that's really the focus of this program. So how does it work? Basically, it's pretty straightforward. We have a website whereby issues can be posted. The ideas and issues identified by the municipalities are posted. Then there's the voting process. From that voting process, priorities arise and we create project plans. We then go to this funding stage, and then we share the results and products with all those involved and the general public as well. So if we dive in a bit more on these different steps, so municipal staff, councillors, managers, everybody online here today can certainly go on to the Community Conserve website and post the issues or ideas they have for their municipality. The postings are anonymous. Only the Community Conserve team sees names and contact information, so there shouldn't be too much concern about, I don't know, dealing with potentially delicate issues or that type of thing, and having a manager come back and say, who posted this issue or something like that. So it is confidential in that sense, or anonymous, I should say. Any municipal personnel can click on the issues or ideas they see as relevant to their municipalities. So there's a voting process. There's no limit to the number of ideas you can vote for. So you can see maybe all of the issues apply to you. And you can see the count of the voting below each issue, as we'll illustrate shortly. Then it goes into, assuming that it's been kind of prioritized through the voting process, then it goes to the team, and we convert the highest priority issues into project plans. And that's basically a general outline, approach, and budget for the program itself, or the project. So the idea behind the whole area, the whole concept of Community Conserve, is that we get to leverage municipalities with obviously often budget constraints to deal with sharing some of the costs of having some of these challenges addressed. So this is when within a municipality there's going to be a need to identify the person who has the authority to sign off on some of this budget spending, and really the process is more facilitated than that, insofar as that you don't have to decide right away, oh, I like this issue, we need somebody to sign off on it. There's a button that kind of identifies that you want to start a conversation around a specific issue, and then we'll follow up with, the partners will follow up with you, Mistakis and the ELC will follow up with you, and how that process works. All the project results are shared on the website, and they're free. There's no registration required, and as in line with our mandates as nonprofit organizations, we do distribute them through a Creative Commons license, so municipalities can share them. Basically anyone can share them as long as they're not changed from their original state. So if we just have an example, you identify an issue of concern, for instance, and maybe this one isn't as relevant for those online right now, but what is the municipal role and liability in managing brownfields, for an example. You then vote on those priority issues. There's a variety of issues listed, And then that gets to the project plan stage. We review that, the team develops a project plan, identifying the scope of the project and the budget. We then will go out and engage with the municipalities that have expressed interest, both with those online, but also any other direct contacts we might have with those who might be interested in a specific area. Then we go into the discussion around how much things will cost and how we can share those or leverage those costs among various municipalities. We then formalize the granting agreement and arrangement through a grant agreement, and I'll briefly describe that next. And then we get the work product in the end. And hopefully that facilitates some level of action within the municipality or across municipalities. Some of these initial projects we've done are quite focused on general education. So for an example, the Environmental Law Center projects are really quite focused on informing people about kind of the scope of municipal powers on different topics. So what are the things to consider when you're looking at some of these projects? Obviously, if there's no funds accessible, that question of where there may be a pool of funds available to deal with some of these challenges will be top of mind. What other municipalities, if any, have the same issue? So do you or your staff have an idea or a discussion with other municipalities where it's clear that it's a multi-municipality issue? What internal process is required to sign off on this type of grant? Is everyone aware of the nature of the grant? This isn't the nature of a contract per se. It's not directed by the municipality, although it's kind of a grassroots project. It's not the same thing as we owned, the municipality doesn't own the work product insofar as it's a Creative Commons license, so it is intended to be a public document. And who in our municipality can provide value added? And really the question I think is top of mind is how can the results of a specific project be used in your municipality? What is the actionable item? What are the next steps that might be required to bring this project into the realm of resulting in action on the ground, whether that's a conservation initiative or a policy initiative within the municipality, or more generally, what are the next steps, if any, required to roll these projects into an actionable state? So all municipalities can view the project plans, which are posted on the website. Then you get information about the status of each one. So you'll see here as an example, there's a project and there's no supporters currently. This one is on property taxation and municipal conservation lands, which is definitely a key issue, I think, with many municipalities. So then you can see the status of that, and then you can choose to support it. And as you can see in this screenshot now, that to start the conversation down on the bottom there. And that's really the key trigger point where staff at Mistakis or the LC will help facilitate moving that project forward. That just covers what I just said. As I mentioned, each completed project has a page on the website, so it's easy to access and distribute. This one relates to conservation tools for the municipalities under the Alberta Land Stewardship Act, or ALSA. A variety of webinars were conducted in the past for that. All the projects and completed projects, as I mentioned, are available online, as are the webinars. In progress projects are also here with indications of the status and when the reports or project completion dates are slated for posting. And here's the list of the variety of projects that we've done to date. So municipalities in brownfields or contaminated sites, as I mentioned, the Alberta Land Stewardship Act, conservation tools, webinars, uh, municipal management of industrial development, a conservation easement guide for municipalities, municipal management of water bodies, municipalities and environmental assessment, uh, scope of municipal powers in the environment, and how municipalities apply environmental reserve. So that gives you a bit of a flavor of the breadth of type of projects that we've undertaken so far. So the projects can be a wide range of things, from policy development to specific research questions that you have. If we then move on to the grant agreement, it's pretty straightforward. It sets out the nature of the grant. Again, the Creative Commons license. It is a grant insofar as the relationship is not the form of a private contract, but because we are nonprofit charities, it's the form of a grant. So really that means that the Mistakis and the ELC maintain kind of control over the end product. That being said, it's all public, so that's a key aspect. We also outline the scope of service, as you might imagine, in a schedule to the agreement. It sets out timing, and it also sets out mechanisms where if there's the need to cancel or terminate the agreement, either because of a lack of capacity to do the project, which is unlikely, but if there's a lack of funding, perhaps, then there may be a need to terminate and then refund the money. So those are the types of things that are required and as part of the agreement. We're attempting to, or hopeful that it would be a standard form agreement for anyone who's interested in pursuing the grant, and it's pretty straightforward and nothing too earth-shattering, although I think sometimes there's challenges when passing things through administration, if it's a bit different, which this would probably be a bit different for most municipalities. So ways to use Community Conserve. Certainly the initial idea, and I think our ideas initially have evolved a little bit. The idea was that the municipalities would engage on the Community Conserve website in voting for projects, and I think we're just trying to create a groundswell of knowledge and information around the site to have that happen. So if the project looks like it would help your municipality, and your municipality could possibly commit some of the project budget. Of course, depending on how many municipalities are interested in the specific project, the budget can go significantly down, hopefully, and hence the purpose of the whole site is to really leverage that funding, and then starting that conversation with the community partners. You can leverage funding for your own project. Maybe you have a project currently underway, or you have an idea for a current project. You know of other municipalities that might be interested in engaging in that project, but you haven't insufficient resources at this stage. So maybe you just need to get it all topped up, and then we can help facilitate that as well. Or you can perhaps use the platform for your existing project. It's already in development. You've got a municipal partner or several of them, but you perhaps lack the resources or the expertise and mechanism to deal with some of these funding challenges, and to have the resources of the ELC and Mistakis applied to that project as appropriate. So again, contacting us through the website will get the ball rolling. And we're quite excited to say that we have a matching grant program. Thankfully, from philanthropic foundations, two foundations have given us some matching dollars that we can apply to different projects. So matching up to $10,000 for 5 different projects we have in line. The call out has already started going out, but we're going to continue to seek ideas or project ideas until basically the end of this year, and then review them and hopefully then pursue a few of those projects in the new year with a 4 to 6 month turnaround time at that point. So if you have anything in your mind already, um, please contact us and we'll see what we can do. So you can submit a simple proposal to info@communityconserve.ca, basically setting out what your idea or issue is, which other municipalities might be seeing the same issue, and how much you might be able to contribute. Then we'll get back to you with a project plan, and then get it moving forward. There are some guidelines for the matching grant, insofar as I mentioned several times, it has to be an environment or conservation issue. It requires it to be foundational information, meaning research, tool development, guidebooks, legal foundations, or policy reviews. So it's quite broad in its scope, but its focus isn't meant to address a specific circumstance in a specific municipality per se. If you can recast that in a broader policy context, then I think, or a broader tool development context, then I think that's the type of project we'd be looking at. It has to be proposed by an Alberta municipality, and it has to be applicable to more than just one municipality. So multiple municipalities, as I mentioned, have to have a similar need. So the site, as you might imagine, is communityconserve.ca. No registration, no fees. All products created are for the purpose of public education, and more specifically, municipal education. And we also have a newsletter related to that you can sign up to. And there we go. That's the info. That basically is the end of the webinar, and I would welcome any questions or comments. So I think one of the key questions, as we reach out to different folks who are actively governing landscapes or managing things, is to really identify those issues where you might see some application and opportunity to leverage funds in a way that basically builds capacity within your municipality and in other municipalities. Oh yes, and the webinar itself is recorded and will be available, as will the slides are available as well. So if you email the info@communityconserve.ca and you want to share the slides and or the webinar, we would encourage you to do so. And if you have any questions or anything like that, you can contact that as well at info@communityconserve.ca. Any questions from anyone? Not seeing any. Well, I want to thank you for taking your lunch hour to hear me on the Community Conserve concept and the program, and hopefully we'll hear from you, because I think it is a good opportunity, and I think the main aim of both Mistakis and the ELC is to drive towards conservation and environmental law and policy kind of initiatives that municipalities face, and to kind of overcome or attempt to overcome some of the challenges we have on the landscape that whether for conservation issues or other environmental degradation issues that we might see as municipalities happening on our landscape. So seeing none, no questions coming up, uh, I will stop the webinar and thank you again for participating.